weeks ago, when we were doing a webinar, I talked about, someone asked me how we lost so much weight and why we look so good. And I was saying, well, we actually follow our body's logic. And so I promised to share what we do as food for thought for you, so that you can then decide what you would like to do, how much of it is relevant to you, how much is not. So today, I'd like to share with you these simple, practical steps that Karima and I have followed, through which we have let go of much of our excess weight and shaped ourselves up to a level where we're shopping for a new wardrobe, we're having fun. So it's always good to share what we have learned. Now, about 3 months ago, I was asked by a member of our family to look into the scientific validity of some of these pretty expensive supplements that he and his friends have been taking for weight loss and health enhancement. They all want to be fit. They asked me, said, can you please look at the science of it, because there's so much out there, and maybe give us your opinion. So I began to look at the links that I was asked to review. And, with a critical scientific eye, what did I discover? I found that there's a lot of stuff out there online, much more than I had realized. And the product offerings are endless. Weight loss is a multi-billion-dollar industry because we all desperately want to look good, lose excesses, and enjoy good health. And these are great objectives which we should all strive for. But let's be smart about it. Most links I viewed showed me a man or a woman with a perfect body, dressed in a tight t-shirt or a gym outfit, subliminally telling me, the viewer, that this is how I could end up looking should I follow their guidance and spend money with them. Great marketing, I have to give him that. Very clever. And I found that a lot of the science that is being touted out there, they use big words that could bamboozle the average person into believing that their rationale, is basically correct. And, when we don't understand, sometimes we blindly follow. And I also found a lot of times biological facts are picked, and specific facts, and then manipulated to narrow them down to whatever fitted the product that was being sold. Now, we all know that nothing in our body works in isolation. So when we look at the rest of the big picture, many of these arguments begin to fall apart. I found that some of the explanations were either half-baked or intentionally biased, and in some cases made no sense to me. Now, this is my personal opinion. There were, however, a handful of links that did make sense to me, and the science, as far as the science was concerned, and they were a great read. So there's definitely good stuff out there. And I shared my opinions with the family member who asked, and that's what I've just shared with you, is that let's be smart and discerning about the choices we make. And I'm not for a moment suggesting that anyone give up the supplements they are taking or drop the programs they're happy with. I would say, please do absolutely carry on with whatever works for you. That's good because it's working for you. I'm simply urging some wisdom and healthy questioning. I personally tend to rely on simple foods of good natural sources and quality that I can buy in a grocery store. And you can call me old-fashioned. I like foods that come from the farm to the store with soil still on it. I grew up on a farm and appreciate the value of natural foods that have little or no preservatives or processing carried out. Foods that go off if I don't consume them quickly enough, because if they can go off, that means natural organisms can break them down, means I can digest them better. And fruits that don't shine with wax coatings, natural origin is what I seek. So the taste and nourishment that I find from these natural foods is out of this world. So that's my own experience. So when I look at fancy things online that have gone through so much processing, I pause and ask my question, okay, is this correctly concentrated to give me the best value? Answer is yes, I'll do it. Answer is I'm not sure, I'll go to the grocery store. But that's just me. So, my dear friends, based on 45 years of experience as a scientist and engineer, working extensively with the science of nature and putting it into practice at industrial level, environmental level, nutritional level, I learned that we need to go to basics to find the answers we seek. We have to go back to the very simple basics because there's so much confusion. So I think it works best to filter down and come back to the question, how was the body created and programmed to function? How was it created and programmed to function in this environment that we live in? Let me explain further. A few months ago, Karima and I decided to lose weight and get healthier, and I'm sure we all do that from time to time. But this time we chose to follow our body's basic operating logic. And the results certainly made us feel better and more energetic than ever. We lost weight. We were very happy. But before we go any further, I must point out that very clearly that what I'm about to share with you is based purely on what worked for us. And should you wish to adopt any of it, please make sure you've consulted your doctor or your nutritionist or your advisors to ensure that it is safe for your body and health condition. So it's very important we all recognize this. What I'm sharing is what worked for us. It doesn't mean it works for everybody, but take whatever I'm giving to you today as food for thought. And if you want to adopt it, check with your advisors and then decide. Okay. So how did we harness our body's logic to achieve our weight loss in as natural a way as possible? What did we do? We basically adopted a holistic approach to our well-being and weight loss. Now, what do I mean by this holistic approach? My dear friends, I see our physical body as being like an instrument in an orchestra that operates in harmony with our mind, emotional body, and spiritual self. So our physical body is just an instrument in this great orchestra, and it's in harmony. It has to operate in harmony with the body, mind, emotions, and spiritual self. All of these together make up the orchestra of our being. So everything we do has to have a holistic dimension if we want to achieve enduring long-term results. And if they are in harmony, it will reflect in good physical, mental, and emotional health, because the purpose of us all having this physical body and mind and emotions is to experience life fully in this world with the best possible quality of life that we can attain. So to successfully achieve this, we have to engage our physical body, our mind, and our emotional body in a completely holistic manner. And today I'll share with you how we manage to do this practically. So let's start with the physical body. So the physical body, in my opinion, is a perfect creation. It is a perfect marvel as to how each of our organs functions in harmony with practically every cell. I think creating such a body is beyond human capability today. And we are still scratching the surface when it comes to the science of how the body was designed and how it operates. We are scratching the surface and how it evolves to sustain us in our changing environments. So today we will explore the first principles of the design of the human body in order to decide our best way forward with respect to our weight management and letting go of all the unhealthy excesses and accumulations that we have allowed to occur due to our lifestyles and many other factors. So here are 6 factors to consider as part of the weight management baseline. These are the factors that guide what I do. Number 1, the human body was designed as a self-regulating engine with numerous auto control features that ensure the survival of the body in a broad range of environmental conditions. So it's a self-regulating engine, this body, from the weight perspective and energy perspective. Secondly, an engine requires fuel storage and combustion processes that produce energy on an ongoing basis as required on demand. Engines do that. Thirdly, the body's primary form of fuel storage is fat, which is distributed in different parts of our body, depending on our lifestyle, diet, and environmental factors and health. So fat is not taboo, as most of us have been led to believe. It's not taboo. Actually, fat even serves core functions in the nervous system, for example, because it provides insulation for all the nerve sheaths in order to preserve nerve health and prevent short-circuiting of the nerves. I remember about 15 years ago when I went through major surgery in the US, they, it accidentally damaged my spinal cord by putting the anesthesia needle right through the durals, and I had a big spinal hematoma, and my nerves were damaged, and I could feel the short-circuiting. I never realized so much current can flow through a human body. And then I was told that it would take a long time for the fat to accumulate on my nerves again. And we're talking about like 1.5 millimeters a year or something. And I was asked to take omega-3 fat-rich diet to provide my body with all the fats it needed to restore my nerve health. And so that's where I drew the parallel with why the body produces cholesterol. Because cholesterol, is made by the body, and it helps in maintaining the required supply of fats. So what we take in cholesterol is 20%. 80% is made up by the body. Now, we're all aware that the fats we consume, and there is good cholesterol, which is called HDL, which the liver can readily transform, and hence the body can utilize. For example, olive oil, coconut oil, and some of the seed oils and fish oils with omega-3. These are all good forms of HDL. Then there is bad cholesterol called LDL, which accumulates in the body, in the arteries, causing blockages, etc. So bad cholesterol examples include things like fried foods, processed foods with partially hydrogenated fats, margarine and processed fatty meats like bacon and other fatty processed foods. So these are just some examples. And I would recommend you read up on HDL and LDL online and make the right choices of fats that you consume and foods that you consume. It is worth the time investment. And I would stick to the foods that you can buy in the grocery store rather than pay crazy prices for some of these specialty products marketed out there, unless their value is really justified, in your opinion. And there are things like that. So simplest is often best as a starting point, I believe. And so Karima and I tend to avoid or minimize these LDL fats in our diets. We've pretty much stopped all forms of LDL cholesterol in our diets. Next, which is the number 4 out of 6, is the combustion in the body's engine occurs via fat burning or burning of sugars that are either ingested through what we eat or sugars that are produced in the liver, which uses fat as its base. So excess uncombusted or unburned sugars are also converted to fat by the body for its use later on. So everything goes back to fat. Therefore, fat is typically one of the key endpoints of all our excess energy-bearing foods. And that also creates a problem. See, I look at the body's fat engine as having 2 fuel tanks. I'll give you a very simplistic explanation so you can see where I'm coming from. So the body's fat engine has 2 fuel tanks. There is the main tank, which is the biggest, and that is for storing fats. And then there's a small tank for storing sugar. Now, why does the fat have the biggest tank? Because fat is the key ultimate body fuel. So if we take in a lot of sugar that the body is unable to burn completely, then it accumulates in the small sugar tank. And once this sugar tank is full, the excess sugars get converted to fat by the liver and other systems, and this fat gets stored in the big fat tank. When the big fat tank is full, the body starts to store fats around the organs, like the liver, for example, causing fatty liver and its related complications. Or it stores these excess fats in parts of the body, like our belly areas, which impacts our appearance and our all-round health, including muscular and spinal health. Because this belly pouch is extra weight in the wrong area, and I'm sure we've all struggled with it, but it's the weight in the wrong area for the spine and muscles to deal with. So as your belly fat goes, you start having back problems. The body works completely in sync. And so we have to kind of solve the problem there at its first principles. Belly fat is often called white fat, which is very hard to break down. But with the correct fat burning strategy, we managed to eliminate a good amount of it from our body and belly areas, both Karima and I. We just used the correct fat burning strategy, which I'll share with you today. So this two fuel tank analogy also explains to some extent, in simplistic terms, why people with diabetes end up with lots of white fat on the belly area. Because high sugar fills the small gas tank, and extra sugars end up in the blood, because insulin production from the overworked pancreas is dropped, gets depleted, and then of course this additional sugar is converted to fat, which accumulates around the organs and the belly area. It is very uncomfortable for those who have had to deal with this excess stubborn white fat. And I'm speaking from first-hand experience. It's not fun. Next, fifthly, the engine of the body chooses its fuel for combustion, depending on how much readily available energy-bearing nutrients are present. Being lazy, the body prefers to first use sugars, which give off energy easier and faster, but often in sharp bursts, which are not good. Now, burning of fats is more work for the body, but this process yields a steadier flow of energy via more complex pathways compared to sugars. So the body goes for the easier stuff first. Sixthly, and finally, the intelligent control systems in the body that control this engine, they release biochemicals in so many forms to regulate the performance of this engine in as best a way as possible. Now, this is where, my dear friends, this control system can be used to our advantage in healthy weight management and caring for our body. So using these 6 points or 6 key aspects as our baseline, we can approach our eating timings and habits in a way that gives us the best fat burn. That's the goal. And in this regard, Karima and I follow intermittent fasting, for example, as a means of achieving maximum fat burn. Now, this is not a new concept. Lots of people have practiced intermittent fasting, and many are currently practicing it, and a lot of them are quite happy with it. However, based on my understanding of this fat-burning engine of the body, I have tweaked the process a little bit to make it more effective for both Karima and me. So I've made some minor changes, and we saw the impact, which was quite positive. Now, those who are not familiar with intermittent fasting, it's not a long-term fast. It's like every night you go to bed, and per routine, you wake up in the morning, you have breakfast, then you have lunch, then you have dinner, but your body is constantly taking in nutrients, sugars, fats. Now, with intermittent fasting, you kind of extend the amount of time when your body is not feeding and reduce the amount of time when you are feeding yourself. And you can reduce the time, and during that eating time, you can eat whatever you like. So there's not as if you have to curb everything in your diet. No, eat what you like, you can enjoy it, but you reduce the amount of eating time out of 24 hours down to maybe 8 hours or 10 hours. That's intermittent fasting. And it's not so difficult to do. Now, there's a lot of information online on intermittent fasting, and do look it up. And generally, this information expresses more confidence in the short-term benefits. And there is little indications of the long-term benefits or efficacy because that's not been studied so far. Now, from the baseline I've just shared of the body being a fat-burning engine, here are some pertinent factors to consider if we go back to basic principles. Human beings were originally created as hunters and gatherers, and our digestive system and energy management system was geared towards eating when food was available, because we would hunt, we would kill. When food was available, we would eat, and then starving once food supply was exhausted. So that's how we were created. Hunt, eat, starve, hunt, eat, starve. Therefore, we consumed larger meals less frequently. This was how we started off. Subsequently, as we developed farming and food management capabilities, this pattern changed. However, our enzymes and biochemistry have remained at a stage that favors less frequent eating rather than constant grazing, which has now become a part of modern day lifestyle, driven by habit, taste, instant food availability, body conditioning, and emotional factors, to name a few. How has the body responded to this change? What has it done? So the body's core strategy of fat storage and combustion, with preference given to easily combusted sugars, that has remained unchanged. However, since most of us consume more calories than we burn, our body has shifted into an abnormally high program of fat storage. So it's shifted its program into higher fat storage because that's what we're giving it. And this results in, for example, obesity, fatty liver, etc., a myriad of associated challenges with this whole shift in program, because more calories going in than we are burning. Now, intermittent fasting is helpful because at its core, it regulates the timing of our intake of carbohydrates and sugar. That's what we are doing, is we're shrinking the timing of carbohydrates and sugar intake so that the rest of the time our body is burning fat. That's the strategy. And so this encourages the body to default to fat burning. And in my opinion, this is very helpful. However, the duration of fasting is not absolute. We don't have to fast for the exact number of hours each day. Actually, that's counterproductive because our body is very smart. If it sees us fasting every day for 15 hours, it will alter its program. And next thing you know, you're not taking advantage of fat burning. So actually, we should keep varying these hours. That's one of the other tweaks which I applied to our intermittent fast. And the amount of available sugar in the system is believed by many to be depleted within 12 hours. So common consensus is that 12 hours after you've taken in your last sugar, your body now switches to fat burn. This is common consensus. However, this is not entirely cast in stone, in my opinion, because it all depends on the last meal that you consumed before your fast began and its composition. If it was sugar-rich, and assuming you have good insulin production and management, then the 12-hour clock may be realistic. However, if for unregulated diabetes and varying metabolic rates, people have slow metabolic rates in different bodies, this 12-hour duration could be significantly longer. So it may be 14 or more hours. So there's no absolute about this 12-hour number that everybody talks about. So I think it's very much got to do with what you last ate and what you did after you ate. Now, the opposite can also be true for bodies with healthy sugar management and high metabolic rates. In such cases, less than 12 hours may be needed for sufficient sugar depletion and commencement of fat burn. So it can go either way. Therefore, the first step is to evaluate the composition of the last meal you consumed and the level of physical activity you had after that meal. This is the key. We found that walking for 20 to 40 minutes after a meal burns significantly higher amounts of sugar compared to being inactive after a meal. You eat, sit down, remote control, watch the telly. That's disastrous. So we found that walking 20 to 40 minutes made all the difference after dinner. The logic here is that the body goes into high energy consumption. It goes into that program after a meal because of the high energy demands of your digestion process. You can also see this via increased heart rate and blood pressure after a meal because your full body's energy is now diverted to your digestion. And the body prefers at this stage to consume whatever freely available sugar there is it can find to support the energy requirements of this digestion. Next, new sugar supply also comes from digestion, which is made rapidly available to the bloodstream for energy supply, logically. Hence, all these available and often excess sugars must be burned off as quickly as possible. And the simple answer is a good walk after your dinner. A brisk 20 to 40-minute walk post-dinner is vital to putting the body into fat-burning mode quicker during the subsequent fasting period. So you want to get to that point where you're now living on your fats and your body is breaking down exactly what you want it to break. Now, I believe that commencement of the fat burning could be made to begin in less than 12 hours, depending on your body. If you walk after dinner, you'll definitely make a dent there. Because from this point, after your walk, your body will now be burning fats for energy rather than sugars, because the sugars will have been depleted or you've helped deplete them. This way, the next 4 to 8 hours of the fast, even while you sleep, could be utilized optimally for the fat burning programs. Even while you're sleeping, once you've depleted the sugar and the body has moved into fat cycle, you are living on your fats, which is what you want. So what Karima and I do is we eat our dinner before 8 p.m., usually around 6:30, 7. And then we eat and at that time we eat whatever we enjoy until we are full. So we're not restricting ourselves. Funnily enough, with this fasting approach, our quantity of food intake has naturally gone down. After 8 p.m., we don't eat anything. And all we consume is water, usually hot water. And we go for a walk right after dinner to burn off our sugars. We absolutely avoid eating late dinners and going to bed on a full stomach. As we used to do this many years back, and it was a terrible idea because in Spain, while we were living there full time many years back, the restaurants open at 8:30, the good ones. So by the time you eat, it's 9:30. By the time you get home, you're tired, you go to bed on a full stomach. What happens? Sugars become fats and starts accumulating. That's how we got ourselves into this mess, which we're just getting ourselves out of now. So after a good walk after dinner, by the time we go to bed, we feel light and comfortable. And our body is in near fat burn by this point. This is one of the tweaks we have added to our intermittent fasting. Early dinner, then burn off the sugar, and then avoid foods after that, especially those that have sugar or carbohydrates. But generally, we avoid all foods. Simple strategy. Early dinner, burn off the sugar, and avoid eating after that. We drink as much water as we need during our fast period, and that's great. Also, if we have had dessert and fruit at the end of our dinner, we walk for 40 minutes or more to make sure that the body burns off as much of it and while it is in high digestion mode. That's a window of opportunity. So this is one of our keys to getting the most from our intermittent fast. Therefore, my dear friends, the goal here is to keep your body in fat burn mode for as long as possible without starving yourself. We found that fasting for longer hours becomes much easier after a few days of intermittent fasting because the body gets used to its new energy supply program. It knows now this is the new way, and it'll follow it, and the old habits start to die away. So it does not so difficult to do. And in our case, it happened quite fast, actually, especially when we engaged our mental and emotional body, which we will discuss in our next webinar on how to engage your mind and your emotional body and your higher self to help your body move into this level of healing itself, making itself better, losing weight, and enhancing its energy levels. Now, when I was growing up, I was always told having a good breakfast was a must. But now I realize that while that is true, the key question is, when is the best time for me to have my breakfast? I believe it has to be after my body has burned as much fat as possible. Remember, as soon as you have sugar while you're fasting, even one grape, the body can switch out of fat burn and go into sugar burn. So while you're fasting, I would avoid sugar, which includes milk as well, because milk has lactose sugar. So I would stay away from any form of carbohydrate. That way I keep the body in fat burn as long as I can. That's the plan. So let's look at Karima's and my daily programs. Very simple. After we wake up in the morning, we have a large glass of warm water. First, to mobilize whatever may be stagnant in the system overnight. That's good, just good practice. Next, we have a window of a few good hours of fat burn before we have our breakfast. So what do? First, we take in a couple of very healthy natural oils to aid in digestion and healing of the bodies and its digestive tract. These natural oils are very, very helpful. So we take a tablespoon of extra virgin first press olive oil, which helps reduce constipation, and the vitamin E also helps heal any damage in the digestive tract. Remember, pay a bit extra, but take extra virgin olive oil, not the one that is blended with other vegetable oils. Now, I put a proviso here, assuming that all these are suitable for you, and it works for us, but it may not work for you. Next, we take a tablespoon of MCT oil, which is extracted from coconut oil. And this MCT is actually pure ketones. It's a pure ketone extract. And the brain can feed on it instead of sugar. So those of us losing our memories, for example, this is a great brain food because brain diabetes is common as we age. So if all we give the brain is sugar, then it starves. And so the cells die down and we start losing our memory. But the MCT oil ketones are a great solution because our brain can metabolize it without relying on the normal sugar digestion process. Now, if you want to mix this oil in your tea, it's fine too. Some people take what is called bullet coffee, and you can look the recipe up online, but basically, and we were shown this by our kids several years ago, when they said, you guys, to help your memory, you should start taking MCT oil, and they showed us how to make bullet coffee, which is basically, we got a NutriBullet mixer, and we make coffee, percolate it, put it in the mixer, we put a bit of butter, we put the MCT oil, spin, and then we drink. Now, the butter we add needs to be small in amount. That's the only proviso we felt was something we didn't follow the normal recipe. But you can look it up online and tweak it to suit your liking if you choose. But we found that taking this, now why do you add butter? Because butter helps carry the MCT oil. It's a good carrier. Now, when we started taking this bullet coffee, actually our memory started coming back. We started having more and more mental clarity. So it helped us. But when we went on our weight reduction program, we dropped the bullet coffee. And we simply take the 1 teaspoon of MCT oil instead. And it's also available in capsules. So when we travel, we just pop a couple of capsules in the morning. And if you don't like the oil, then you can consider taking capsules. It's easier. Next, while we're taking in the oils, so there's olive oil, there's MCT, I take a teaspoon of pumpkin seed oil. Again, full, completely organic pumpkin seed oil, which is excellent for the prostate. Karima doesn't need it, thank God for that. She's lucky. But I take it because it's a form of nutrition and it provides the necessary minerals and metals that keep the prostate healthy. And even medication, natural medication for a prostate is generally made from pumpkin seeds. It's called saw palmetto. So I have a teaspoon of that and it's very helpful. And then finally, we take a teaspoon of avocado oil, which is very healing and nutrient rich for the first thing in the morning when our stomach is empty. So we start with taking these natural oils while the stomach is empty, and then we make our tea. And usually we take black tea or black coffee. And then we add a mix of metabolic boosters to increase our fat burn. We add it in the tea or coffee. Now, what are these metabolic boosters? Very simple. We add a powder of freshly ground dry ginger, cinnamon, cardamom, and star aniseed to our tea or coffee with a little bit of black pepper. Historically, Indians have taken masala tea for breakfast for centuries. There's great wisdom in that because these are excellent metabolic boosters and anti-inflammation agents. So historically, they figured it out. And I found that just adding these to our tea takes the metabolism up. Sometimes people would even just grind fresh ginger and put it in. It's a metabolic booster. As your metabolism goes up, you start burning more fat. That's the logic. And if you don't have time for fresh ground stuff, simply add powdered, you get this tea spices, masala in powder form, add it to your tea or coffee, and you're good to go. And you'll actually feel the kick in metabolism after you've had your tea or coffee. Since the stomach is empty, first thing, when we awake, their uptake into our bloodstream is very fast because there's no food in the way. And when we take that as the first drink of the day. Hence, tea or coffee with ginger, cinnamon, cardamom, aniseed, plus a dash of vitamin C-rich lemon. That offers a very positive start for our day. So that's what we do. Now remember, no milk or sugar of any form. So my dear friends, these boosters basically increased our fat burn, and that's why we began to see a change in our body shape. Next, after having the tea, then we take a 30 to 45-minute walk while we are still in fat burn mode. Stomach's empty, metabolic boosters are burning fat. Now we're going to walk and burn some more fat, which is good. So if you're going to work, for example, you can walk part way to work. It helps. Then the next question is, when should we break our fast? What is an optimal duration? So I would suggest that an irregular pattern is very useful to keep the engine's control system always performing at its best without defaulting to a new program, which it will invariably create if it sees a fixed fasting schedule. If it sees 15 hours every day or 14 hours every day regular, you're going to lose the benefit. That's my understanding. So we keep fooling the body. We keep varying it every day. One day it's 12, one day it's 14, one day it's 16, and we found that a 14 to 18 hour period was a good goal to work with, because if you go 14 hours means you are eating for almost 10 hours. If you're doing 18 hours, you're eating for 6 hours. The cue to break fast will come directly from the body in the form of hunger. You start feeling very hungry, you're ready to break your fast. If you don't feel hungry, which now happens with us a lot because the body is used to fat burn, that means your body is perfectly happy burning fats. So wait till you do feel hungry. So listening to the body is the best management tool. Now let's look at some timings. We typically stop eating at 8 p.m. every day. Then zero food after that. 12 hours after that is 8 a.m., which is a fair time. So if we do 14 hours, we can eat by 10 a.m. And you can add the hours accordingly based on when you had your last meal. I often go to the 17-hour mark. That would be about 1 p.m. because this extended point is where the body is also known to go into deeper detox phase, where unhealthy cells are broken down and replaced with new cells. And I believe detox actually happens sooner than 17 hours because the body is not burdened with any significant digestion activity. So it's repairing itself. So that's why I take about, usually I will push it sometimes to 17 or 18 hours, but other times I'll do 15, I'll do 14, I'll do 16. I'll keep varying them. So timings is one of the tweaks we added to the intermittent fast because generally people tend to follow a fixed amount of time, but we tweaked it by varying the time and we found it worked well for us. Then comes the exercise. And we usually do a fat burn walk in the morning before breakfast, and then a sugar burn walk after dinner. So when it comes to exercise, you do fat burn walk in the morning before breakfast and a sugar walk burn after dinner. These two walks are golden. They are really, really helpful. So what other tweaks did we consider for cleansing our digestive system and mobilizing fats and further boosting our metabolism? I believe a good quality apple cider vinegar, for example, which is rich in nutrients and healthy phenolic compounds, plus it has trace elements, that can also be very beneficial if your body can take vinegar without any difficulty. If it can't, then don't take it. But we take 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar in warm water or herbal tea, and with some capsicum in the form of cayenne pepper or seedless green chili powder, or just capsicum capsules, which are easier to take. Vinegar with capsicum is an excellent cleanser, metabolic booster, and a source of very rich vitamins. So that's a good combination if your body can take it. And it can be taken a couple of hours after you've had your morning tea, if you choose to have it. If you don't, you're still going to do very well. But this was one of the added benefits we found. And there's another more rare vinegar, which is called hawthorn vinegar, which also has excellent healing properties, but it's hard to find. And we met some people in Turkey, and there was one young lady who said that her father, due to a genetic defect, had begun to lose his eyesight, and he was losing his eyesight very fast, and the medical community couldn't help him. But the elders in his village guided him to just take this hawthorn vinegar multiple times a day, quite frequently, which he did, and actually he was able to put enough biochemicals and the correct mixes in his body that comes from it to help him restore some of his vision. Actually, it was quite remarkable how much of his vision he was able to restore. Then I started studying this vinegar, saying, wow, let's look at it. And as I looked at it, yes, it has some amazing properties, but it's hard to find. I think it's available from Turkey, and I believe there's 2 or 3 other places where it's grown. I think it's available in Canada as well, if I'm not mistaken. But that's another one which is really good. It tastes quite nice, actually, because it's not distilled vinegar. It's just fermented, and you have it straight, a tablespoon in warm water. I just like the taste of it, so I have it directly. So finally, during our fasting period, especially, we do take plenty of water and non-carbohydrate based drinks to keep the body well hydrated. So that's what we do at a physical level. The next 3 aspects of the process, which are mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects, they play a key role in helping the body achieve healthy weight and general well-being, these 3. And we will cover them in the next webinar because I don't think we have time for it today. One thing we have found, that once we tied together the physical, mental, and emotional elements of our being, our tastes and requirements for food changed drastically. Our body began to guide us on what it wanted and what it didn't want. I mean, I used to love barbecues and steaks and rich foods. And I went through a period of time where for 2 weeks, I didn't want to look at meat, which is like shocking. I didn't want to look at some of the things I loved. And yet I was now feeling like eating foods which normally I would look at people and go, really, isn't there anything better you could find to eat? But it's like that. I started wanting to eat natural spinach. And spinach that, was still got soil under on its roots, like straight from the farm. I wanted to have beans and lentils and thinking, what's going on? But through this physical, mental, emotional, spiritual combination, I gave my body the lead and put my mind in the back seat. And it knows what it wants. So I went for 2 weeks, in a completely uncharacteristic. One time I had invited people for dinner, and it was one of our favorite dishes. And a couple of hours before, my body said, "I don't want to eat this stuff." And honestly, when I look at it, and if I try to eat it, I nauseate. So it's that powerful when it tells you what it doesn't want. And when you listen to it, it's fantastic. The results are amazing. So up to now, all these years, I have lived with my mind, which knows very little about what my body really wants, needs, but my mind has controlled what I eat and drink and how I care for my body. Now today, we listen to our body, and it's surprising what it asks for. And once you give it that, you will feel so different and better. And we will learn the practical steps of how to do this in our next webinar. Today, I wanted to cover the physical part. And in the meantime, we have laid out a fair bit of information here to digest on the physical aspects of healthy weight management, which I hope you will have found it interesting and hopefully useful in your own journey. And also, I must clarify that the explanations I have shared are quite simplified so that we can understand it. I haven't gone into the big science of it. Also, I must clarify that rather than focus on specifics, it is more helpful to capture the essence of the message. Only take on board what you're comfortable with, which is entirely your call, and don't what you're not comfortable with. So, Tosin, like if you want to come back on, and we can see if there are questions, and I'm happy to take them because it's a good time now if someone hasn't understood something.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lovely question that somebody's put. How do you accommodate enough protein in a short eating window? What's the question?
I think if you have 6 hours or 8 hours, it's plenty of time. And if you choose the foods you eat well, you choose good protein-rich foods. And that's one of the things that your body leads you towards, by the way. So, if you're eating fish, you're eating lentils, you're eating beans or high protein foods, in that period of time, it's ample. You don't have to be eating protein for, at least from our experience, you don't have to be eating proteins for 12 hours a day or 14 hours a day. So the days when we break at 14 hours, we're eating for 8 hours, but still, we tend to have fewer meals. We have 2 meals, and in that time, we have breakfast, which is a good breakfast, which has protein, and then we have early dinner, which is again got protein. and it's ample. But what it has done for us is that we've started losing the white fat on our bellies. Our bodies have become healthier. I used to suffer from fatty liver, which I don't now. So, the advantages of letting the body fix the mess we have created and yet working with it in complete harmony, that's the key.
Beautiful. Next question was, how about fasting once a week? Question.
Great. I mean, look, those of us, who fast in the month of Ramadan, for example, fast for the whole month, we stop eating, we start eating. There's a long, mind you, unfortunately, the way it is practiced, people don't eat for 12 hours and eat for 12 hours. But ideally, the intent was to give your body a chance to basically detox itself and burn the fats and achieve the health benefits. So if you fast once a week, it's fantastic. For us to achieve what we wanted to achieve, we had to actually work with the intermittent fast, but work with the last meal, the walk, the sugar burning after food, and the fat burning after breakfast, and the metabolic stimulants, which are all natural. We found that that was the optimal way for us.
Brilliant. Rosie is asking, what would your breakfast consist of?
Typically, it varies. Typically, we like to have eggs for breakfast. I like smoked salmon. So there's protein in there. We try nowadays to keep away from too much wheat. And actually, our bodies don't want it. So at one time, both Karima and I were bread lovers, and we still are. But now we tend to have rye bread, breads that are not of wheat. And then sometimes we feel like having wheat, we will. Or when we go out for coffee and we see a donut, yeah, we'll have it. Sure. We're not restricting ourselves, but at that time, it's that eating window when the sugars are coming in, but we're active enough also to be burning it. So if we're going to have coffee and donuts, be sure we're going to take a walk after that. So, that's the way it goes.
Somebody
Yeah.
once said to us as well, I was reading a book about that. They say if you're going to have the donut or you're going to have the cake, have it with white yogurt at the same time as well, and then go for that walk, as you said,
Yeah.
to help afterwards. So, which makes
Yeah.
a lot of sense. Nimra says, most of my weight gain has come after menopause. What are your thoughts on that question?
Yeah, I think menopause is quite a complex subject because you go through hormonal change and your body's character changes. And also you find that post-menopause, even your body's ability to uptake calcium comes down, which is why arthritis and all that sets in, especially with women. So in whether it is a result of post-menopause, it still helps to go after the fat that now your body is accumulating, which it didn't accumulate before. But we don't let it stay there. We do everything we can to bring it down and regulate it. And hopefully you will find it helpful. You may find that because these white fats, once we leave them for long enough, and of course, I've had diabetes for many years, and there was another good medical indicator for me that we were on the right track was that I went from full-blown diabetic to pre-diabetic now. So my sugar numbers are actually below diabetic levels, which is the first time I've been able to achieve this since I turned 50. So, that was another indicator that when I went for my last set of cardiac tests, I've never had a better result. So it does mean that whatever I'm doing is helping.
Lovely. Charlie asked, intermittent fast for average 12 hours and then have breakfast at about 9 a.m. Would it not be too late for your dinner time?
Well, it depends what time you had your last meal. So if you had your last meal of the day, last night's dinner was, say, 9 p.m., then 9 a.m. is too soon. If you finished eating at 6 o'clock in the evening or 7 o'clock, then you've got yourself 14 hours, which is fine. So you have to play with your schedule, like if you're working and you have to fit this into your lifestyle. So if you're working and your working hours are A, B, or C, then you try and fit in when you have your dinner, when you have your breakfast, when you put in your walk. It's very much a personal management thing.
Okay. We got a long one here from Sheila.
Mm-hmm.
Just she says, Amyn Dahya, I have also been doing intermittent fasting and have lost 5 kg without any effort.
Mm-hmm.
However, I have 1 tablespoon of organic cold press sesame oil and only fruits for breakfast, cooked food after 12 noon only, finish my dinner by 6 p.m. each day. However, there is one downside. I have found that it feels cold enormously, and it's what is this? Penetrates the body in such a way that I feel unwell and takes up to 3 to 4 days to recover. Please advise. Thanks, Sheila.
Look, I think from what you're saying to me, and there is one very important factor, and I'm glad you brought this up, is you should not be negative on calories. So if you are burning 10 and you're taking in 9 or 8, you're going to see what you're going to experience what you are. So people who are doing really well, they go, I'm going to go and do more. And I know of a young lady who's done phenomenal, but then she went into negative burn. So she was consuming fewer calories than she was burning, and then she ran into all kinds of problems. So I would not recommend that. I would look at your breakfast. I would look at taking in the oil. Sesame oil is very good as well. I would look at the oils you take. If taking in a little bit of butter is not bad for you, I would look at your diet and make sure that the foods you enjoy, you're definitely taking in more than you are burning. So what you're describing to me sounds like that. Now, that's just based on what you've said. Now, you may ask your Dr. Priya, and she might be able to give you her feedback on it. But that's my immediate reaction, is maybe you're consuming less and you're burning more.
Okay.
We have 2 minutes.
2 minutes. So we got a couple more.
One more question.
One more. Okay, we got best food to accelerate metabolism, please.
Best foods?
Yeah.
Well, I've found that when I look at Chinese and Indian foods generally that have come down for generations, there's a lot of wisdom in there. And, when I look at some of the herbs and spices that we use in Indian food, as I was growing up, it was natural to have it. But, them adding cumin, them adding turmeric, adding ginger, adding garlic, these are all very good foods for high metabolism. And they seem to have been blended into the food, the diet historically. So obviously, our forefathers and their ancestors knew what they were doing. And you find the same in Chinese food as well. And you might find the same in other cultures and traditions. So from my point of view, like I now see, for example, in Germany, when I travel on business, I see everybody taking a ginger shot in the morning. And I took it too because it's fantastic. So somehow, things that kickstart your body and your system, that's what you need to take. If you take heavy stuff that slows your metabolism down, then you won't do very well. But there again, when we learn about next class about how to engage the mind, the emotional body, and the spiritual self with the body, you will find actually that your body will be picking out, because now you're putting it in the lead. It will be picking out what it wants, and whatever it wants, give it. And you'll also find that if you crave something, by all means, go for it. So I've shared a number of the typical metabolic boosters with you, but as I said, some of the spices that we consume, some of the herbs that we consume, A lot of them are metabolic boosters. Mint has a great effect as well. So if you look around you, you're probably already taking it. But we're taking it while we are in that fast phase because we want the body to burn more fat. So with that, I'd like to conclude. If there are any more questions, I'll be happy to take them the next webinar we do, because I was hoping to finish all of them at one go, the spiritual, emotional. But by the time I got to finishing the physical, and I didn't want to rush you, and so I figured let me do the second half because it's equally important. But there we will learn some nice techniques which will also put us at a great level of peace, because that presence of constant peace in our day-to-day lives while we are working with our body, it's very inspiring. It actually feel happier. Apart from feeling more energetic, you feel happier because you're putting the body back into the position it was created for, and not taking the mind and whipping the body and using emotions, strong emotions that damage the body. We're going to learn how to separate all these things. So if there are more questions, I'll take them at the next class. But I'd like to thank you all very much for being here today. The topic is different to our normal learnings that we go through, manifestation, meditation. But I've had many people ask me these questions, and I thought, okay, let's share them for what it's worth. So thank you all for being here. And I pray that you all be blessed with very, very good health always, that you may be happy, and that the light of our Creator may always be with you to help you, guide you, protect you, and love you always. Stay blessed.